Welcome, dear listeners, to the Carolina Haints Podcast, brought to you by Wreak Havoc Productions and A Darker World. I'm your host, Dan Sellers. This is a bit of a departure for this podcast, but most people associate hauntings with the holiday of Halloween. However, those of us who enjoy ghost stories know that ghosts don't really wait for a specific time of day or even day of the year. The paranormal can manifest during the most pleasant spring afternoons just as easily as a dark, stormy night. No, it's actually the opposite. Ghosts don't care about whether or not it's Halloween, but Halloween is dependent on our obsession with the paranormal to make it one of America's most favorite holidays. All Hallows Eve, or Halloween, is a primarily Christian holiday that is celebrated in many countries. All Hallows Eve evolved side by side with the pagan celebration of Samhain. All Hallows Eve marked the beginning of a 3-day All-Hallow-Tide, which was a time to honor and remember the dead, including saints, martyrs, and the faithfully departed. All-Hallow-Tide is somewhat similar to the Day of the Dead, celebrated south of the border. Samhain, on the other hand, simply marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of the darker winter months. As Christianity began to spread throughout the ancient world, the church recognized that they could not easily do away with the established pagan traditions without alienating a vast number of patrons. The church began a passive-aggressive campaign that included switching the dates of Christian holidays to correspond with the pagan ones. In 609 AD, Pope Boniface IV moved All Hallows Eve from May 13th to October 31st. As a result, as both traditions evolved through the generations, each one influenced the other until they merged into what we now know as Halloween. Both holidays shared the concept that an essential part of the human consciousness continues to exist after the death of the body. All Hallows Eve obviously deals with the dead, and it's virtually impossible to think about the dead without at least contemplating the afterlife. And part of Samhain acknowledged that during this time, the boundary between our world and what they called the other world was at its weakest, meaning it's the easiest time of the year for spirits and beings to cross over. As popular as it is, it's natural to believe that Halloween is an American holiday. But it was brought here by European immigrants in the late 1800s. As the holiday once began to incorporate new traditions into it, it changed once more. The holiday started to become more about community and friendly get-togethers rather than pranks, witchcraft, and ghosts. It also began toning down the superstitious and religious aspects, becoming the Halloween that we recognize today. Through the years, Halloween has grown to be more of a secular holiday, forsaking both its pagan and Christian origins, becoming more about fearing the dead and the things that we don't understand, rather than honoring them. Regardless, many of the original traditions persist, even if we've forgotten why we do them. Traditions such as eating certain foods, not eating certain foods, wearing masks and costumes, bobbing for apples, jack-o'-lanterns, lighting bonfires, and roasting nuts. All of these were different ways of keeping the devil and his minions at bay. Souling was part of the All Hallows Eve traditions. As early as the 15th century, poor people would disguise themselves as the dead and go door to door begging for money or food. In exchange, the beggars would recite verses and promise to pray for the family's dead relatives. The church encouraged people to bake soul cakes to share with the beggars. They also asked that the cakes be made with the shape of a cross baked into the tops to further separate All Hallows Eve from Samhain. Later, the practice became known as mumming, and guising began. They believed that by impersonating the dead, it would protect the geyser from the dead and ensure that the dead could not follow them home. Although the holiday of Halloween was adopted by Americans in the late 1800s, they did not immediately embrace the mumming and guising tradition. In the 1920s, the practice began to take somewhat of a hold in the popular culture of the day. However, when World War II ended, people began leaving the cities and building homes in the suburbs. Halloween, and particularly trick-or-treating, thrived in these suburban neighborhoods. Trick-or-treating remained a popular, family-oriented activity until the 90s. Many social and economic factors during the decade of the 90s and the 2000s changed trick-or-treating. Many people moved from the suburbs into apartments during this time. There was also an increase in the number of single-parent families, so children had to find a way for trick-or-treating to survive despite their parents' ever-growing busy schedules. Malls, churches, and other locations began to coordinate specific trick-or-treating events where kids could go be monitored and kept safe even if their parents couldn't be there. Many neighborhoods designated specific times for trick-or-treating, making it easier for the parents to schedule time off and to cut down on mischief in an effort to make the tradition safer for everyone. Several foods are associated with Halloween besides the soul cake. Barmbrack cakes were tiny cakes that were made by the dozens, but one would be baked with a small ring inside and one with a coin inside. It was believed that whoever found the cake with the ring would soon marry, and whoever found the coin would soon find wealth. Other foods tied to Halloween are candy apples, bonfire toffee, candy corn, caramel apples, and roasted sweet corn. There were several games linked with Samhain and Old Hallows Eve. One of them was bobbing for apples, where the player must try to retrieve an apple from a tub of water using only their teeth. The Celts related apples with immortality. A jack-o'-lantern is usually a carved pumpkin with a light inside of it, although there are many variations as well as local superstitions. But the jack-o'-lantern is generally accepted to have its origins in Ireland in the mid-17th century. An old Irish folktale tells the story of Jack, a lazy but quick-witted turnip farmer who used a cross to trap the devil. One day, Jack had stolen from some villagers, and they were chasing him. The devil appeared and told Jack that his time had come to die. But Jack tempted the devil. Why just take him when he could use the opportunity to play tricks on the villagers instead? Jack proposed that the devil turn himself into the coin that Jack had stolen. The villagers would come take the coin back. Then later, when the devil and the coin disappeared, the villagers would argue over who had stolen it. The devil agreed. He turns himself into a coin and jumps into Jack's wallet. There he finds a cross and there with him. Jack quickly closes the wallet tightly. The cross stripped the devil of all his power, trapping him. Jack makes a bargain with the devil. He will let him go if the devil agrees to never take his soul. The devil concedes. Eventually, Jack the thief dies. He had led too sinful a life to be allowed into heaven, and the devil had agreed never to take him into hell, leaving him no place to go. Jack asked the devil how he would see since he had no light. The devil tossed him an ember from the depths of hell that would never extinguish. Jack carved out one of the turnips and put the coal inside. He endlessly walked the earth, searching for a resting place. Over the centuries, people have been putting carved jack-o'-lanterns on their doorsteps in order to scare away evil spirits, especially Jack. Fire has always been believed to possess a cleansing, protective quality. In some parts of Europe, people would run and jump through the smoke to gain protection from evil spirits. In other areas, the entire village would douse the hearth fires on the afternoon of the bonfire. Then, as the evening's festivities drew to a close, They would fashion torches lit by the bonfire. They carried these torches home and relit their hearts in an effort to bond the families of the villagers together. In Great Britain, bonfires were once used for divination. After the fire burned to embers, they would place a stone in the ashes for every person in attendance. If any stone was found out of place the following morning, then allegedly the person it represented would not live to see the next Halloween. Bonfires also unexpectedly but irrevocably linked the bat with Halloween. The bonfires would attract insects to its dancing lights, and in turn, bats would feed on the insects. So, more often than not, during the bonfires of Samhain and Halloween, bats were seen circling above the flames, waiting for an easy meal. There were also several divination traditions related to Halloween. Hazelnuts were believed to exemplify divine wisdom. In one tradition, 2 hazelnuts were roasted near a fire. One would represent the person roasting them, and the other a person that they desired. If the nuts jumped and danced, that was considered a bad sign. But if the nuts quietly roasted themselves, it was thought to mean that the two were a good match. In Ireland, cakes were baked with hidden items inside. Traditionally during Samhain, the public would stay indoors. The souls of the dead were thought to roam freely during this time, and it was believed that they would return to the homes they once knew in life. Places were set at the dinner table, saucers of milk set on the doorstep, both as attempts to make the spirits feel welcome. They thought that if they showed their deceased kin hospitality, that would bestow blessings upon the family. However, the spirit could just as easily exact their revenge against anyone if they thought they had been wronged. In addition to departed loved ones, evil spirits and supernatural beings were also free to move around during Samhain. To keep those spirits away, the families would carve faces into turnips and place candles in them. They placed these on the windowsills around the house in an effort to ward off the evil spirits. Years later, this would evolve into the carved pumpkins called jack-o'-lanterns. Pumpkins are less dense than turnips and easier to carve. If they were forced to go outside during Samhain, they believed that they would encounter a ghost or spirit. They thought that if the being recognized them, that it may follow them home. To prevent this, they wore costumes. Popular opinion ebbs and flows through the years over what our favorite Halloween costumes are. Supernatural beings have often been popular costume choices, like vampires, monsters, ghosts, or skeletons, even witches. However, popular celebrities and generic archetypes such as ninjas, princesses, and pirates are also pretty popular, as well as whatever Disney or Pixar characters or kids are obsessed with that particular year. And yes, even clowns too. To learn more about the history and origins of Halloween, check out HalloweenHistory.org or GothicHorrorStories.com. This episode was researched and written by Jeff Cochran and is narrated and produced by me, Dan Sellers. If you enjoyed the show, please feel free to check out all our projects. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Recap Productions, and I'm on Twitter at Hank vs. the Undead. You can find every episode and everything else we're up to at our website, recapitproductions.com. Don't forget to check out adarkerworld.com for updates on Jeff Cochran's work. And feel free to email us your suggestions and queries at recapitproductions@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to this special episode of Carolina Haints. We hope you have a safe and fun Halloween. We'll be back on November 3rd with another episode. Tune in then to hear more about those things that go bump in the night.